Stony Island Audio.
Let's just start with Habeas Corpses, which to me is like I I listen to a lot of shit like Frank Zappa, and They Might Be Giants, King Missile, like all of
Mm.
these indie bands, and then Zappa, of course, is a classic musician. But one thing I've always marveled at in rock music is how imaginative those artists are allowed to be. Like they get to craft these stories and these worlds that hip hop, in a large sense, it wasn't encouraged in hip hop. Like, what I mean? It always felt a little weird, but like this is a wild story
Right.
in this song, Habeas Corpses, you and Cage. Like,
Yeah.
it takes a long time to really understand what's happening, and it's like all these it's like a little movie.
Two types of people in this world to recognize. Conquered in the one holding the rifle, the next in line. The crosshair, my eyes, a vessel to guard. The container that kept you around in a hole in the yard.
I would love to hear a little bit about like coming up with the idea and like bringing Cage into it, and just what that experience is like of putting that song together.
There's sort of a war trilogy in that record. I have to go back into this to explain Habeas Corpses.
Got you.
Dear Sirs was my fantasy of what I would say if I were drafted to go to war for this country. My statement in response to being drafted would be, even if the most unbelievable, impossible, fantastic, and ludicrous things were to occur, they would still be more likely than me fighting in a war for you.
If the pavement comes alive, I'll flap a shab, a toothy smile, comprised of traffic cones and manholes become eyes, and birds burst into flames while singing Satan's praises and fall into the sky and rain down ashy dangers.
And that was the idea of that letter, like sitting there and typing this furious letter, like even if the streets became water, and even if like it's still more likely to happen than me fighting in a war for you motherfuckers.
It's like the opposite of a love song. It's like,
it's like definitely not a love song.
The opposite of I would climb the highest mountain. It's like the mountains could turn to shit before I would do this for you.
Yeah, we could literally, like the fucking, like people could turn into snow cones, and it would still be, it would still be like, that's weird, but what's weirder? The idea of me going to war for you. And that led into the Run the Numbers shit, which is kind of in an abstract way, sort of being like in the shit, kind of being in the war.
Broken and bleeding, right attached to the Brooklyn I vagrant. Half of a body monkey, out people on a follow agent. Ran a tarantula, known to handle the face of drunken. Scripted on city park benches under the fritzy tongue.
Habeas Corpses, it's a sci-fi fantasy allegory.
Right.
That's all. I mean, that's really obviously what it is, I just imagined, I imagined a future world in which fascism had, emerged and taken over. And I just tried to get myself in the head of one of these average Joe schlub motherfuckers who gets up every day, puts their fucking camo on, loads up their rifle, and goes down to the fucking job. And the job is they shoot motherfuckers. They execute whatever they may be, prisoners, refugees, prisoners of the system, the working Joes of the concentration camp. The guys who, when the shit comes down and there's some tanks outside of their building, they say they were just following orders. I wanted to get into their head for a second. And with the idea that the rising of fascism is directly associated with the destruction of empathy. Fascism does not work unless you can first eliminate empathy in the common man. One of the easiest ways to eliminate empathy is give them the job. There's an immediate acceptance of the bending of a moral code under the guise of survival and under the guise of sort of an automatic response to a task given to you. So I pictured these two scumbags who just kind of think that they're just doing their thing, but they're so far removed from empathy that all of a sudden the one guy starts to have this really strange feeling that he can't quite understand, or which is that he feels something. He feels something for this woman, and this woman who's coming down the line and who he ultimately is going to have to shoot. And, he's sort of fantasizing, like, and sort of asking his friend, like, hey, man, like, I know that we often rape and kill these people, you know, but do you ever kind of want to just, I don't know, just fucking grab them and protect them and run away from here and then go escape? And then and Cage's character is this sort of guy like, oh, hey, I know what you're thinking. Like, go ahead, I'll cover for you. Go ahead, rape her.
Yeah.
But the guy's like, no, that's not what I mean. I mean, I want to protect her. And then it sort of goes into this fantasy. But the fantasy is distorted because the fantasy of love and the fantasy of protection is coming from this guy who's completely lost connection to the human spirit, has no idea what empathy really is. So it's like a child trying to understand how to, you know, like sometimes a child will pet a dog or something, but it's hitting the dog. You know, it's like, no, you got to like,
right.
You know what I mean? So this guy's fantasizing about, in his own fucking patriarchal, fucked up, dominating, evil way, he's grappling with the idea, the very natural idea of protecting someone and being empathetic and being in love with somebody. And he goes into this fantasy, you know, and even in the fantasy, he's fucked up. Even in the fantasy, he's like, I'm the first to touch you without gloves on. You're the first to kiss me without crying. It's this monster trying to express something beautiful, but there's nothing beautiful inside him. You know, imagining escaping with this woman and living in the hills and them, you know, having this simple life together, in which he lets her, you know, clean for him. It's just, you know, this fucked up. He's dealing with, for the first time, all these ideas. And then at the end, he just shoots her.
Right.
At the end,
he does the job.
At the end, he does the job. And that's what I think is the truth of the phenomenon. At the end, the job gets done.
Man, you know, it's a fucking fantastic story.
Thank you.
But then it's also a really fucking beautiful song. You know what I'm saying? Like, y'all really did that shit. Y'all did that. Man. Y'all killed it with the raps, the beat, the music, all of that, man. Like, that's just like, that to me is like one of the, that's a fucking achievement.
Thank you.
You know what I'm saying?
Me and Cage really sat down. I kind of laid out to him what I was trying to do, and we really sat down and talked about it. And the dynamic between the two guys, you know, and Cage has a dark perspective, and I needed dark. You know, I needed a guy who could get in touch with the darkness in the human heart, to be that guy who's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. You know, it was like the guy's friend who's like, you know, listening and being like, nope, not ringing a bell. Like, I don't know what it's like. Nope, don't really know what it's like to, you know, to feel anything. You know? Which of course is not the truth of who Cage is, but he's a great writer, and he always goes, you know,
man,
dark. So we really outlined it. And then the second part, the whole fantasy part, was really just me just sort of trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's trying but failing to be a good person. Really has no idea what it means, but is experimenting with it, daydreaming about it, and then kind of deciding like, you know. I've always been proud of that one. And I think that, you know, like you were saying, there are other genres in which kind of going there and building worlds and just sort of not worrying about losing anybody is par for the course to a degree. And sometimes when you do it in our genre, you might feel like you're taking a risk of losing people. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that that's
100%.
One thing that I definitely didn't ever give a fuck about, was whether or not I was losing people, because as far as I was concerned, I really never had anyone. You know, like, it wasn't, all I ever got was because I wasn't thinking about anybody else when I made the shit. So whatever success that I did have, I could look through my whole catalog and be like, there's really nowhere on here that I backed away from, kind of, you know, that shit. Right. So I just let myself go into it. Like, fuck it. This is the type of shit I'm interested in. That was a chance for me also to honor some of the lineage of the shit that I grew up on. I always like to think of myself as a child of the sort of dystopian historical future novel. Certainly everybody has picked up on it in my writing. Not sci-fi, like, oh, it's another planet and there's a crazy creature, you know, like it has two mouths, but like the logical extension, the metaphor, the blown out metaphor of the human condition. And using science fiction, because it's simply in the future, you lose a lot of the prerequisite desire to keep it grounded. Just go for the metaphor and the commentary. And I'm not smart enough. I'm not a good enough writer to write the type of novels that inspired me. But I wanted to at least contribute my version.
Stony Island Audio.